Hello and welcome, everybody. Hope you're all well. Hope you're all having a great day. I've accidentally put an overlay over my face. There we go. Well, what a show today. What a show. I'm quite excited about today. Big love, big blessings, peace, honor, and respect. It was a glorious morning on the mountain. I actually watched the sunrise from the mountain, didn't go to the beach. It's getting later for the sunrise, and it's an early morning. I am expecting Chris to be here shortly, and Silas, he said he would be here. So I think these two gentlemen are running a little bit late, which is all good. We're going to start getting into the deep end. And I hope my audio is good. I don't have any feedback here on the audio. So if there are any issues with the audio, do let me know. So we have an exciting discussion today. For me, this is very exciting because when we look at the ego and the persona and the egregore, for me, this is powerful. This is powerful law that I believe is becoming corrupted. And as we go in through this conversation, I will explain to you in what way I believe that this law has been and is being corrupted. I do get the sense that, as most of you that are here probably are aware and realize, there have been changing history. And this changing of history is a big thing. And in the process of changing history, they are woking us out. And we think this wokeness is a new thing. But it's something that our previous generations have been dealing with. And they used to speak of it to us when we were kids, if we remember. Remember? In my days, it was much better. In my days, we didn't do this. In my days, the education system was much better. And we just put it down to, like, old farts talking about how great things were in their days because they are reminiscing romantically about the wonders of their youth. But is that really what's going on? And we can really see in this modern epoch that we find ourselves in just how much adjustment there is happening. For example, children are now being taught in schools to spell the word woman with an X. Point in case. So this is not new. I was struggling against this at age 12. I was fighting against my school. I said, what's this nonsense with you guys teaching us to spell words like this? I said, this is new. And I was producing older pieces of literature and showing them how words used to be spelled. Why can I not spell words the way they've always been spelled? Who are you to tell me that I have to change the way I spell words? And we look at the religious documents. So the Bible has had 25,000 edits just in the New Testament, just the New Testament. And so there's this continuity that we can witness, which is a resculpting of history, the narrative of psychology, and, wait for it, of the occult. And so we're going to look at the word egregore, and we're going to look at which version of the word egregore is being popularized, in the same way that on the round table, for those of you that haven't been watching the round table, we really got into this discussion with Cosmic, myself, and Indy Sage about whether or not our perception of Gnosticism is Gnosticism, or is it just one fringe cult perception of one version of Gnostic tradition, in the same way that Jehovah's Witnesses are one fringe cult perception of Christianity as a religion. They don't speak for Christianity, they speak for Jehovah's Witnesses. And so we've been brainwashed, even with occult thinking, even with occult psychology, even with the philosophy behind the occult, and the way in which the meanings of words are continuously being subtly readjusted. There's this continual adjustment of the manifold of perception. And this is really fundamental to understand, because the structure of the id, of the identity, of the personal forces that are manifesting into this body through the persona's embodiment of the attachment between the ego and the physical vehicle. This is really the key to understanding how MILABS or MK Ultra, depending if you're in the UK or if you're in the US, how these operations work, and why neuro-linguistic programming is such a powerful tool, why we can use it for our own benefit, and how it is so powerfully being used, and why for our detriment by Hollywood, advertisers, politicians, everybody with an agenda that wants to change and shape society, shape our culture, shape our minds, shape our ideologies. And namaste, welcome to those of you that are watching. I hope you're having an absolutely gorgeous day, smiling, full of joy, because the joy of life is flowing through us right here. And as I say, the joy of life, guess who arrives? On cue, joy of life summoned. I have now summoned the joy of life. Welcome, Chris. Chris, as you know, is an awesome researcher, wonderful guy, bit of a rock star, actually. You can check out his channel. It's in my suggested. I've actually had one of your tracks in my head for like weeks now.
Which one?
The one where I can't remember the name of it. The one where you're sitting in the restaurant and you're doing like a gig in the restaurant, and the couple comes in, and just the way that your voice moves on, it's just so beautiful, man. Just so beautiful. Go and check out his music. You'll love it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's from a movie. It was from a
Okay.
movie I did, and I had to write a song for the movie. It was like a weird Christian film, but it like turned into a more of a just like a family type of film where I was a musician who had drug problems, and like it's all like a rehabilitation type of story, like a redemption story.
Seriously?
Yeah,
Dude,
I don't know. I don't even know if it ever.
From us?
I don't know if it ever got released. Honestly, it was like held up for years, and people like other actors who were assholes just on set trying to sue for more money. The one producer who like had started the project and paid the original writer director to do it wanted more money, but then he was like trying to steal money from the investors. It was all because it's an indie film. So I mean, when you have independent films like that and you have random investors coming in and out, like you get shady people sometimes. So I have no idea what actually won. I don't know if it ever was released. I don't think it was. So
Dude, we must go and look for that film, dude, because that is such a cool track, man. I love that track.
yeah, no, I
Really
actually
beautiful.
I'm happy because the song came out of it at least. So
Yeah, man. Yeah, beautiful song. Beautiful. It's just too short, according to my opinion.
That's why it's true.
Do with another verse.
That's why it was short, because it was for the scene, because it only had to be like 45 seconds to a minute.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it was like 2 minutes, but anyway, it's like I thought to myself, one more verse would have really nailed this song, because like it's over too quick. You're like, damn, that's it. Like, where's the rest of it?
Well,
Come on. I could listen for
that.
another 2 minutes to this track. But yeah, man. So, and those of you that don't know, Chris is a researcher, and he's embedded within the Steiner tradition as well as other occult philosophies and spiritual traditions, and just like a really switched on guy. It's an honor to have you here, brother. I hope your
honor to be here,
your
man.
evening is going well.
It is actually. How's your morning going?
Oh, wow. It's rocking and rolling, man. I watched the sunrise from the mountain because I didn't have time to go on the beach to make the show. And I didn't lose anything from it. There was no loss. No loss of translation.
That's my fault because I make Franklin come on so early because I can't get on here any earlier than late night for my time. So that's partially my fault.
No, it's the same time as every day. It's just that the sun is rising later. So because the sun is rising later, like that means that I've got to readjust this for my son's school. Namaste, Systematic Zoo. How are you? Hope you're smiling. Hope your lovely partner is well and your kids are thriving and everything's good on your end. So yeah, man.
How does it sound, by the way? Sound good?
Your sound
okay?
Sounds fine. Is my sound okay?
Yeah, no, you're great. Finally, I think we're done having issues.
Namaste. You all demons. People are so stupid, you say.
Oh, God. They
I
are.
think
But
people are programmed. You know,
hey,
I think
Franklin,
people are programmed.
keep talking. I can hear you. I'll be right back. 1 second. I'm going to shut this door over here.
Good, brother. Good,
Okay.
good. So, yeah, I think that like the reason why people act unintelligent is because we've been programmed. When you talk about the religious Christian films. Namaste, Vincent. I hope you're good. Hope you're thriving. Hope you guys are all good and smiling. Look, there's been 25,000 edits to the New Testament alone. 25,000 edits. No, more than 25,000. Just the New Testament. We haven't even looked at the Old Testament yet. So whatever they are shoveling at us in the form of Christianity has got absolutely nothing to do with Emmanuel's teachings, I think. Once you've edited a piece of work 25,000 times, you have changed it. You can't pretend that you haven't. 25,000 words changed is a huge difference. Like my son, shame, he was asking me this morning about what food they eat in heaven. And I was like, seriously? Like your mother professes to be a Christian. She hasn't even read the Bible. It's very clearly said in the Bible that they don't eat food, that there's manna. And that even on earth, the humans used to eat the manna from heaven and they didn't need to eat, right? So why would they need food in heaven when they got manna? Come on, where your manna is, boy. You know, and I do think that this is like really what it is like you say, we're living in a world of Dumb and Dumber, and I put that down to the persona being put on a stage. The persona is sitting on the throne, and they have taught us to name the persona ego without actually recognizing what the persona is. It's a completely narrative-driven entity. And I think that this is really where we find ourselves sort of falling short of the reality, is because we're all talking about ego. And we're not recognizing what that is. Nobody's speaking about persona, because to understand that you have an ego, that is an operation through which the soul can move, an identity. But then that identity becomes reflected back at us by our narrative, by the linguistic process in our minds. So I associate linguistic development with the persona, and the persona is a linguistic entity based upon the narrative that we run through our heads, the story we tell ourselves about ourselves, the story we tell ourselves about each other in the world, becomes who we are, this person. What are your thoughts on this, dear brother?
I mean, it's interesting you're bringing up language, because this is something that I feel like me and Gabe have been having a lot of discussions about this. I mean, this seems like it's such a subtle point when you bring up language, and I don't think people understand how powerful it actually is. Like it is a source of all of the everything that the black magicians and social engineers do. Language is at its root, and I honestly think they wouldn't even need the technology if they didn't have it. Like they'd be fine without it, with getting as much control over the population as they wanted, just using language. And I think people don't understand that.
Yeah, so this whole narrative-driven reality that we're living in, I mean, if we are honest with ourselves, like how much of what we tell ourselves about reality becomes the reality we experience? How much of it is based upon our ideologies? And our ideologies are based upon our belief systems. And our belief systems are based upon our linguistic learning. And our linguistic learning has become a pattern. Yeah.
This is just going to get worse. That's what these large language models are going to do. They're going to keep finding the patterns and what we're all speaking, and it's going to start manifesting it virtually or augmented in our reality, and we're not going to eventually know what's real and what's like a real synchronicity versus that we're actually manifesting versus what the AI is manifesting for us.
Here's an interesting point. You've been discussing with me lately in our conversations about time dilation.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a very interesting discussion. It's a very interesting notion, like the way in which time dials in and dials out, and how malleable time is. And so when I think about the ego, I associate the ego. I suppose we should begin with a definition, and we're probably not all going to have the same definitions, but I'll give you my feelings and perceptions on this. When I think of the ego, I think of it as our emotional identity, who we really are in our heart of hearts, who the meanness, me. When I speak about myself, I actually specifically the I is my ego. Then this ego is basically constructed non-linguistically, and it doesn't require linguistic propagation to exist. It exists upon emotional currents of feelings. And so the feelings that I feel who I am. I have a feeling of who you are. That's your ego. I have a feeling of love is really like the fundamental structure that gives an ego identity. And hatred is a thing that disseminates and breaks the ego into pieces. And then this ego requires an extension in order to have, you see, emotion in itself being felt isn't an attachment. It needs to be attached, literally attached to a physical outcome, to a vehicle, to a body. And so it creates a narrative-driven connection, series of attachments that are a reflection of the principles of the ego in the narrative world of the mind. And this then becomes our attachment to the feelings of the ego. And this becomes its own entity, the persona. And we then start to identify with who we think we are based upon what we feel. And we start differentiating our joys and our dislikes based upon the feelings. Oh, that doesn't feel nice, so I like this. That doesn't feel nice. From an ego state, we're just experiencing like a child. A child is born and it develops an ego. And that ego is an innate, natural, cry when I'm hurt, I laugh when I'm happy. And then the narrative starts to jump in. The narrative, the persona comes, well, I don't like those foods. I don't want to eat those foods. So I'm going to use the powers of my ego to not have to eat those foods. I'm going to cry and do a drama when those foods in front of me. I'm going to become happy when I get what I want. And so this persona then becomes an embodiment of this ego process that we then start to identify with, and we start thinking that we are the persona. And the persona always wants to eclipse the ego because it doesn't have relevance. It doesn't have, the only relevance it has is an attachment to the body. And that attachment has got to do with your instincts, the id, the body of instincts. And in order to protect the body, that's the purpose of this persona, so that there is enough of an attachment to the body to realize, oh, the body's hurt. I need to put my emotion into that body now to protect it. I need to care about this body. I need to eat well. I need to keep it clean. I need to, all these things that are driven by our feelings are being controlled by the seat. And this narrative control driver then starts to go, hey, I'm in charge, baby. You're my bitch. It says to the ego. And the ego now has to lie in the corner, and then the ego starts to react to this imposter sitting on the throne. And then you have this ego battle with the persona within oneself, which becomes a clashing. And then we're not in tune with ourselves. And then we're at odds with ourselves. And then we become so crazy, like by the narrative in our heads going round and round, that we lose perspective of reality and we start to generate our own idea of reality. And this is really how the MK Ultra and the MILABS and all the mind control gets into our heads, because they use this because it's a natural instinct. It's a natural weakness that we have. They can abuse it and they can get in there and they can drive this little machine. And then, of course, you have the egregore. And the egregore, this word has changed in the last 35 years. I want to talk about that. Really? When I first started like really getting into studying the egregore, it had a meaning of group mind. That's what it meant. An egregore is interesting. Now it's got a whole lot of other connotations. I'm like, yeah, I heard these opinions years ago, but that's not how it was understood in the mystery schools. That's not how I learned it when I was engaged with other initiates, and they showed me literature, and in the literature, they're like, the egregore just really meant the aggregate. The word aggregate is really, aggregates of consciousness, of light. This is why in the Bible you have to come in threes to pray, right? Because there's something that happens when there's more than three of you. And that's like a group identity that starts to form. And the egregore then develops its own persona, which is interesting. So when egos come in contact, they form a group ego. And then
that's what I thought the definition still was. It's different now.
Well, I've just seen people talking about it in a completely negative context, as in it represents.
It's often discussed in a negative way because it's often associated with like corporations. They become an egregore of like the people who work at it, or the identity of the ideology of the people who work at it. And then sometimes with the dark occultists, I've heard this, where they worship an entity, it becomes like an egregore, and that's where all their ritualistic energy goes to. So I could see that.
Yeah, and like there's resistance with an egregore as well. Like I think this is why we often identify it as negative. Like I'll give you an example. I've been observing this phenomenon for years. If I walk past a home where there's a family, you can sense the egregore before you get close to the property. And the egregore becomes the group identity. Namaste, Mexico. How are you? My beautiful Mexico. I hope you are well. I hope everybody is happy. And so, yeah, you can sense this egregore. And what I've observed, and this is something I've been sort of playing with for many years, I used to walk around neighborhoods and do like experiments, to sense different egregores in different places, because most people have dogs. And I noticed that based upon the egregore in the home, the animals are plugged into the egregore. Very interesting. The cats and the dogs. So I'm like a very magnetic person. Cats will normally come to me. Normally.
See, the way that you're making the egregore, you're making a point to tell people that it can be a negative or positive, or no, like there's really a multiple range of things it could be. It doesn't have to be one or the other. But this has always been something I've used to argue when people, they'll believe in an egregore, but then they say they won't believe in like a Satan or a Christ. Or I'm like, dude, if you believe in egregores, at that point, that means Christ exists, that means Satan exists, that means all of these energy forms exist in one way or another because they've been being fed for years, which means the archetypes of these good and these evils, they exist in physical form somewhere. Like it's in the ether.
Totally, brother. Like you can't argue that the chicken doesn't exist or the egg doesn't exist.
Can't have one without the other.
Come on, there's the chicken. No, there's no such thing as an egg.
Yeah.
Come on, like it doesn't matter which came first.
And a lot of people want to do that.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, this is part of the woke agenda. This is how we've been trained, and this is how we've had our. So when I consider the narrative-driven consciousness, which is essentially that, like, as I say, I relate that to the persona. And interesting, within the word persona, we have the word sun, right? So we're now like, this is the sun represents electricity. It represents the light of electricity shining on matter so that you can see matter, if you think about it. Then the moon represents the night, represents the mysteries, represents the deep aspects within the heart and the self, where you can't just objectify it's that or it's that. It's a mystery. It's gray. There's something going on there. It's a feeling. It's deeper. And so when I consider this like totally masculine outlook of like yes or no, binary, that's it. It's either or. There's no, it can't be yes and no. Whenever we're dealing with the moon, there's a general yes and no-ness, right? And the chicken or the egregore. I love
That's
that.
good. I like that.
Chickens were symbols of bravery. Chickens mean bravery, and they were actually not eaten in the original. Like we go back thousands of years, they were brought to Europe as worship emblems, and they were used ritualistically for sacrifice. And the symbol of bravery that is a chicken, it's one of the most bravest creatures around. It's the only bird that will literally walk right up to you and be like, how's it, dude? I'm not scared of you. Other birds would get the hell out of Dodge because they're like, no, like you're a giant. Like if you saw a bloke, right, that's like 30 feet tall, would you just walk up to him?
Hell no. 30 feet tall?
Like, well, we are the equivalent of 30 feet tall if we look at how small a chicken is, right? Because you're like, what, 6 times, or almost 6 times bigger than a chicken. So if you say 6 times bigger than a human, you're looking at 30 feet.
That's insane.
Yeah, so like this thing's going to walk up to, it's like a human walking up to a 30-feet giant and just walking up to him and going, how's it going, dude? Like this dude could just step on you. That'd be the end of you. You'd never be able to defend yourself. You'd have to be like supremely brave to the point of stupid. We don't celebrate the intelligence of a chicken if we're going to be fair. Bravery doesn't always come with intelligence. And that intelligence is the persona. Right. So now we're getting into an interesting point. That intellect is like is a persona organizing. In other words, the ego is just like driven with the feelings, and then the persona says, "Oh, you got to be careful. This is a 30-foot giant. Like he could step on you." That narrative in the brain goes, "Oh, right. Didn't think about that." Then the ego goes, "Oh." The thought of like that big foot like coming down on me, and then the reality is, okay, let's maybe keep our distance from that thing and make sure that we can outrun it if it chases us, hopefully, or go into a cave somewhere where we can hide away, like most birds would like make sure they're near a place they could fly, or a lizard would make sure they're near a rock to hide under, or even a spider. They let you approach up to a point and then they'll like want to go and curl up in a safe place. But yeah, so like this whole chicken story is quite interesting, I think, as it relates to fear, and fear is how we're controlled. So if you can control the persona, you can manipulate someone's fears. What a thought. And how much fear are we being programmed with? In fact, is it like 80%?
At least, I would say. And I'm wondering now if the time contraction and dilation is part of it.
Now that this is interesting. So in the way that it's a narrative, we build narratives and we narrate a story that hasn't happened yet in our heads. So it's about the future. With the ego, we're expressing in real time what is. So when we're dealing with the ego information, we're dealing with the feelings that have been expressed from the past. These feelings, currents expressed, these are the ego reactions. The narrative is then moving in the future. So the ego expressed a feeling of, oh, that was sore. Then the narrative is, oh, I better make sure that soreness doesn't happen in the future. How can I protect myself from that soreness? So the narrative of the future and the experience of the past meet in the present. And so there's this two-directional time flow, as I see it. From a shamanic perspective, we can interact with our pasts through our feelings and interact with our future through our narrative. So the narrative-driven perspective is able to touch the future, and the feeling, the past. So the feeling goes into the Akashic field, and we can remember our pasts through the feelings. Like, I've got these feelings. Okay, so let's go into the feelings. The feelings will take us back to our childhood. Oh, that's how this feeling came about. That's where this vibration stems from. And the narrative will take us into like the plans and aspirations for the future. So I see that whenever my narrative is driving me, for example, if you are really busy and you're thinking about something, let's say you're watching a film, how quickly does 2 hours go? It just goes pretty quickly, doesn't it? If you're reading a book, 2 hours flick by. If you're not thinking and you're meditating because you're moving out of the narrative into the feeling, how long does 2 hours take?
Longer, I guess, then, right?
Like when you're taking a photograph,
Much
right?
longer.
That minute stretches out.
Yeah.
Stretches out. You're not, maybe you'll be planning the photograph before, but at the moment of like, you're just interacting with reality. And so there seems to be this interesting connection with the more narrative driven we are, the more we seem to move forward into time faster. And the more feeling, emotionally contextual we are, we tend to hold the past with us. And so like we can think of the past as things we can hold on to and slow down time, or we can hold the reins of the future and be pulled by the horses of the rational mind into the future faster. And so this time is this malleable substance. So we are being driven to fear is a reaction because we think of fear as being an emotion. Okay, so let's just like go into this. What is fear? Like, there is panic, which is a natural instinct. Like, oh my gosh, this thing just bit me. You know, being bitten by something, or something's hurt you, or like this, like an earthquake happening around you, right? And that's like your emotional body's active, but it's very active. Fear is a passive thing. It's a narrative in the mind that says you better not get too close to the edge because you could fall. You better be careful. Watch out for the edge. Watch out for the edge. Watch out for the edge. Oh, how close am I to the? Like the mind is doing this. Or if people have fear of animals, they go, "Oh, is that dog going to bite me? Oh, look at that dog. Oh, look at its teeth. Oh, it's a big dog. Oh," and people then generate this quasi feeling, which is an ego response, but they are sort of manufacturing it out of their own narrative. And when you drop the narrative, for example, let's say you go mountain climbing, right? And you forget to look down. You'll notice you don't get scared. The moment you look down, oh my God. It's like, oh my God, what if I fall? Now you're afraid. That narrative took over. And it's a linguistic element of the consciousness saying, but what if, what if, what if? And so you start to imagine possibilities. So what we call fear is the active imagination of possibilities driven by a narrative of negativity, of a negative outcome and potential. So fear isn't, I don't believe fear is an emotion. I think fear is driven by emotions. And it's
Makes
artificially structured. Namaste, dear Mikey. How are you? I hope you're having a good day. So getting to this time dilation, I think that when they can fill us with fear, right, then we start thinking further in the future. Like, how can I stop this from happening? Like, okay, there's a dog. What can I do? Maybe I can climb a tree. What can I do? I can climb that tree. I can do this. Or there's that, whatever it is, it's making people afraid. Ironic, I use the fear of dogs. I don't think I've ever been afraid of a dog. Like in my life, I love dogs. But if you're not afraid of dogs, there is no fear. And when there is no fear, there is no danger. And danger and fear are sort of like this. The moment you allow yourself to go into fear, the danger of that fear, like I can walk around in like a really dangerous area. and like bad things aren't, people aren't coming to me trying to mug me, but like another person does, and like the bad people, because the bad people suss you out and they go like, no, this dude's gonna knock me out. Because I'm there, like I'm like thinking to myself, no, it's cool, respect everybody, but if someone gets out of hand, I knock them out, then I ask questions, you know, in like a dangerous area. For example, I live in South Africa, so there are dangerous areas.
Yeah.
So if someone comes to you and they're acting strange, you just knock him out, like, because this is like, you know where we are, dude, like. So if you've got that and you decide, I'm not going to be afraid, I'll just take action if I need to, then people like sense that and they go, oh, this guy's not a good mark. The person who's walking there and they're a bit afraid, they become the mark. And it's the same with animals. It's the same with spirits, entities. And then that entity attaches itself to the aura, and then it milks the fear, and it becomes like almost symbiotic, dreadful symbiosis, not a positive one. They use the word symbiosis in a bad way, but it supports the narrative of fear so that you can feel the delusion of safety based upon what this thing is driving you towards, you know. Then the safety becomes, let's lock myself in the house and never leave the house, and you become agoraphobic or something. So, yeah, you were telling me about how you've noticed time changing, yeah?
Yeah, and I mean the strange thing, because when you think of it in the way you're saying it, it would almost be like fear would make time go faster. But then you think about how sometimes in situations like where you're in like a really, like an accident, time slows down, which is weird because you'd think that'd be a heightened state of fear for most people. I mean, some people might not be, but I don't know if time would slow down if people weren't in that state of like, and it might be, maybe it's different than fear. And I'm not necessarily feeling fear. I just feel like I have no time to do anything. And one of my theories has been it's location based right now, because when I go to New Jersey, I feel like I have 3 days, 2 days worth of time in a day. And the people I think here, I might just be, it's almost like when you get pendulums, like metronomes next to each other, and they all sync up. And I almost feel like the people in this area, they might be on this like frantic-y frequency where it's making time seem like it's passing quicker than it actually is, and out there it slows back down and normalizes.
From what I've seen about California, and you can tell me, like I only know what I've seen in the media, but it seems like a slightly dangerous place.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten worse. I mean, it's not something I ever need to worry about. The location I'm at isn't too bad, but the people are such idiots, and maybe it's like I feel like people worry about everything here, and I don't hang out with anyone out here anymore. I could feel the worry, and fucking they're all so scared of everything ever since 2020.
People will screw you over and take your money quickly.
I mean people will do that here, but
in California more than in the other place, or am I wrong?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, because it's like there's city environments, and even every other block here now, there's homeless everywhere. Like there's way more than there used to be. I'm just further away from that than most people, especially because I just moved over to like the West Hollywood area from Burbank. And Burbank, there was absolutely no homeless people at all, because that's like almost Burbank and Beverly Hills have their own police, and they keep all the homeless out. They keep basically all the crime out. So over here, it's a little bit worse, but it's not bad either. This is one of the better areas. You start going a little more east is when it starts getting rough. So like, yeah, I mean, I still wouldn't want to be walking around the park out around the corner at night. Like I wouldn't want my girlfriend at least walking in the park at night. I wouldn't mind doing it, but I'm sure someone would come up to me and just try to bullshit with me. It's not like they would do anything for the most part. Out of maybe 1 out of 20 times, maybe someone would. But it's not like every single time you go out, you're going to get. So it's not that bad yet.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because like you talk about that, now I relate to suspended panic and fear in different ways. Like when I speak of fear, I think of a narrative in the mind that we're identifying with. That you need time to be afraid. You need time to think about things. When you're in an emergency, there's like panic, and then there's control of panic.
Yeah,
And
see,
so there's
and
no
it's
time to
I
think
do.
about it. Like in a car accident, you don't have time to think,
Yeah.
like martial arts, right?
No, I think you're right. You're right. I know you're right. And I do very well in emergencies. Like I'm very calm, which has always been something people have told me. But it's my girlfriend was so surprised like the first time we had like an emergency because she always thought that I wouldn't be calm because I don't know. I have no idea why. But she did. But she was just. I just get very calm. It's just how I am. It's one thing I'm good at. But maybe it's just because everyone else is so freaking frantic all the rest of the time that's why like time feels like it's moving faster for me. Because I'm like, what the hell? Like, why can't anyone just be normal? It just feels like you
I
can't get
always
anything
used to,
done.
I always used to say when I was a child and growing up and a teenager, I was like, bring on the apocalypse. I was made for the apocalypse. I was
Isn't it weird
invented
that I feel like
for
we all
crap going wrong, because like that's when I'm in my element. That's when I'm the most peaceful, most centered, most calm.
it's such a
Like
weird
put
thing
me
that
in
I feel
walking
like
through a buffalo stampede. I'm zen.
it's such a weird thing. I feel like so many of us, especially when we were younger, expected to be this to happen. Like all of this stuff that's starting to happen, we almost like knew that we would be in a situation like this that we're finding ourselves in. It's bizarre. I mean, it's part of me is like, I don't like that because it's like, well, we all had savior complexes when we were children and we all thought that we were going to be super important for some reason because we were at this weird time where things would get crazy and we'd all have to find a way to make it through it. But at the same time, I mean, it was an intuitive feeling that was sincere.
So then I would grade the ego and the persona, and I would say that the ego is awareness, and the persona is perception. It's like a little spotlight. And so when you're in a state of awareness, time slows down. When you're in danger, so you and I, the reason why we thrive astrally. Because as men, we're both in tune with our feminine side. Now, men that aren't in tune with their feminine side, they freak out when they suddenly have to be in a state of total awareness. They thrive better with perception, what I can control. But people that are more in tune with their astral body, more in tune with their ego, are actually in other words, like people that just are what they are, and they're like, this is what I am. Take it or leave it, I don't give a damn. Like, you like me, you don't like me, there we go. Like, do you want me to care? Sorry if I don't, like, take me or leave me, and happy to be alone. If you don't like me and I'm on my own, I'm good being alone. I'm fine. I'm good in a crowd. I'm good alone. Take it or leave it,
Yeah.
And people are normally more in tune with their egos. And then the people who need validation are more in tune with the persona, because the persona constantly needs to be validated, because it only hinges upon the existence of the ego. And so it can only get prominence when it can eclipse the ego. Otherwise, the ego has prominence. The awareness is where. So that perception moves us into the blocks of time seem bigger, because imagine a beam of light. If you contract that beam of light, each block seems bigger on a brick wall, hypothetically. Each block seems bigger. If you move that out, all the blocks seem small. And so there's this shifting perspective of like time, right? Like when you shift out, you can see all of the time moments at once. And so you're not going from this time to this time to this time to this time to this time, because it feels like, oh, I've just forgot where I was and now I'm looking at a new thing. I just forgot. You're not forgetting and moving. You're keeping it all in perspective at once on an emotional field. And so this emotional field, when you are in a state of danger, then your feelings activate. This is why people say to me, why did you live barefoot in the jungles? And I'm going like, isn't it obvious? Safety. And people look at me. I was like, dude, the jungles I lived in were like severely dangerous, dude. Snakes, the ants would eat you.
Yeah.
Ants would eat you. Yeah, man, I want to get bitten on my feet when the ants are near me. There's some ants there that will eat you and they bite you and they're venomous.
I hate
And
one thing.
if you get bit,
I hate bugs. I hate them. I just have a thing. It's like my only thing. I hate them.
there,
Can't
there are
stand them.
there are ants that stand with their square body up and they spin webs.
Yeah, it's horrible. The
And they
thought of a
spin
bug
pods
crawling like
in leaves of
in like
pods in
in my
trees.
yeah. Oh, that's the one thing I should be
Like,
better with, but I just don't like them.
I have run for my life from ants. I'm not even kidding.
I
Like
believe
they're
you.
biting me, and they're biting me so bad that I'm starting to
Fuck
feel
that.
like drowsy.
Fuck that. Fuck that. Yeah.
And
I would
I'm
never.
running like I better get far away from these guys because I'm like my brain, like there's something in my brain, like I'm on drugs, dude. I better
Yeah.
get away from these guys, and I'm run like half a mile just to make sure I'm far away from them and like recover, like when I was in the jungles. Because if you step on these pods fall out of the tree,
Yeah.
and they're like a web pod of leaves. If you step on it, they come out and they start biting you. You get bitten by a whole lot of them on your foot and your leg, and you're running, and they're running all over your body trying to bite you. And you're just basically running, trying to dust them off and just keep going. And yeah. No, the ants can eat you. So the jungles where I lived in, there's wild buffalo stampedes, wild bull, loads of elephants, wild boar. The snakes are like 5 meters, 4 meters, 6 meters, like big snakes. And
Yeah.
the little snakes are the venomous ones.
Yeah, they're
I had a
worse.
snake chart.
They're
All the
worse.
little snakes are the venomous ones. So like you got these huge snakes, but the little ones are the ones that'll get you. And monitors that are like 2 meters big, like lizards. And the wild boar, when they see you, they charge. Like you gotta so you gotta be so sensitive and aware. Like you're walking, and there's like, oh, there's a scorpion there. Don't step on it. So when you're barefoot, you feel close to that danger. So if you're living in the jungles and you're barefoot, you feel one with that danger, and that danger keeps you safe because now you're more aware of where not to step. And because you're more aware of where not to step, you also notice snake in the tree. You also suddenly notice there's a bear approaching from that side. You might not have noticed the bear approaching originally, but now you're aware of the bear. You notice the leopard in the shadow there. Keep eye on the leopard. Don't show him my back. They're like these basic survival instincts. And so face the leopard, always face predators. You never stop facing a predator. You never back away from a predator. You never run away from a predator. You face him, you go towards him. You and me, it's on, buddy. They will always back away. But try that nonsense with an elephant, bro. A different approach. Bulls and elephants are like humble. It's like, no, we're good. I'll show you my back. Because they won't take you from behind. They're not wired that way. They don't want to hurt you. They don't have an instinct to like, oh, I saw your back, let me get you. Just in case, So that danger actually makes time expand. And so I lived in the jungles in this like hyper time field. And I noticed, wow, like time. And obviously I was practicing meditation like 10, 12 hours a day. So like hyper time.
Yeah.
The longest 24 hours of my life was the most difficult thing I ever did in my life, and that was to meditate for 24 hours. It was the most painful, the most grueling. It was the most challenging thing I ever did in my life, and it was harsh. Like at some point I want to do 3 days, but I'm like, 24 hours. Like it was an ordeal, man. I'd rather fast for 2 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. When you talk about the walking barefoot and stuff, it reminds me of this is basically what Wim Hof method does for people who aren't doing that. Like, I mean, he talks about walking barefoot and going out with your boxers on in the snow, but this is the reason why. Like, it's these comforts that have turned off our sympathetic nervous system and our reaction and like our ability to, I guess, like you're saying, extend time and live in harmony with that sort of feeling of, I guess it's heightened awareness at all times.
Yeah, so that's I equate the ego to awareness, and the persona to perception, and perception always separates. So like racism, classism, separate you from them from them, me from you, this from this. All of that's like the persona's nonsense, right? Because perception, it's like, I don't want to look at that, I want to look at this. I don't like that, I don't want to look there. I don't like that one, I like this one. It's all based upon like the personal choice, where the ego doesn't make a personal choice. It's like I'm just feeling. And so like, but now you can't separate the ego from the persona, because the persona drives the ego. So the persona then yokes the ego. If you put the persona on the throne, then the ego has to sit at the persona's feet. And the ego is like, but that's my throne. The persona is like, no, you're my bitch. Like, that's how this rolls. Now your emotions become the slave to your desires, and now you become enslaved by your desires, as opposed to your feelings ruling over your desires. As in like I want to have sex with this woman, but then your feelings are like, no, like I actually want to get to know her. What about her feelings? What about her? Like those feelings, like that's awareness. So it's just me. But like men are like, oh, she's hot, I want to have sex with her. Yeah, well, what about feeling? What about her? What does she want? Right? Empathy. The moment that empathy comes in, then it's suddenly it's like, oh, well, she's actually a human being. Like, she's not just what I can get out of her. And so this, I think, is a huge problem in society, that we see each other as what we can get. And I think California might epitomize that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's in both sexes. I mean, it's probably just as bad in the female sex, if not worse at this point out here.
So you obviously feel safer at the other place where you go, would be my guess. What an interesting concept.
I mean, it's weird because I don't even really think about that as much. And maybe it's just like I just feel it's like instinctively. I just feel like I have more time. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's from. I've thought about it when I'm there. I don't feel any different. I don't think any differently about. I'm doing mostly the similar stuff, whether I'm working, like editing, whatever I'm doing. I'm around family, which maybe is part of the reason time seems to stretch out. There? Yeah, that's where my family lives. So usually I'm with family. So I mean, that could make time seem like it's going longer, but it just sometimes it feels so long that I'm like, there's no way. This is so weird. This almost feels unnatural. This doesn't feel like it should be, because they're 3 hours ahead there. I should go there and I should feel like I have less time. But I go there and it's like I get my work day done, and then I still feel like I still have the whole day. I get done with working at like 3, 4. I get done doing everything else 5, 6. And usually I don't go to bed here till like I'm working until 5 a.m. here sometimes, 6 a.m. here. It's like 6 p.m. I'm done with everything there. What the hell? And it's 3 hours ahead. It's 3 hours ahead, so it's only 3 p.m. our time here. So it doesn't make sense to me. One thing I did check on, which I thought this was weird. I don't know if it actually means anything, but I checked. I wanted to see how many cell towers were around me here versus there. Would you want to make a guess how many cell towers were within 2 miles of where I live here?
Sorry, what's within 2 miles of where you live?
Part of me just thought, check how many cell towers are within like, or near where you live. Do you want to make a guess at how many cell towers are within 2 miles of my place here?
2 miles. There must be about 20.
98.
90.
98. And that was 2 years ago. Out there in New Jersey, 40 something. So it's about double. And I'm
90.
like, that's 98, almost 100. And that was before they were going to put in more, which I'm sure they already have.
So that means that one, like, that's just crazy. That's a 2 mile radius,
Yep.
right? So that's 16 square miles. And 16 square miles, 100, then you could say 1/16 of 100 is, gosh, what's wrong with my brain? Is it 7? Almost 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 1/7 of 100 is 16. So there's 16 for every square mile, and a square mile involves. So you're always within 100. You're always within 70 yards of one,
Yeah.
wherever you are.
Yep.
Or 70 yards of 2. Sorry, you're always within 70 yards of 2.
Mm-hmm. And I'm like, whoa.
Average.
And I'm like, whoa.
What a thought, eh?
Yeah.
And 70 yards
It's
is how
really
far you
bad.
can throw a ball. You can throw a stone 70 yards.
70, yeah.
There are
you
American
shouldn't- yeah.
footballers that throw a ball
100,
70
100,
yards.
I mean, 100 yards is football field. Yeah, 70 yards, yeah. Definitely.
A stone is heavier than a ball. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
throw.
you throw.
You
I mean,
really
you-
throw it with your strength. You can throw a stone 70 yards.
Absolutely.
Like, so a stone throw away, you've got two towers. I think that this has got a lot to do with mental modification. Like the way in which these frequencies affect our algorithms of our brain. And you say that you're near your family. When you say that, I'm like, oh wow, that's the next part of the conversation. Egregores. Namaste, Kali. How are you doing? Are you good? I hope you're well. Hope you're thriving. I hope the world is smiling for you. So within a dynamic of a family, even within earshot or heart shot, use that word, within heart shot of your family, you're in a familial egregore. And the familial egregore is a place of love, acceptance, and compassion. That's a rule, even if it's not perfect, because no family is perfect. But at the end of the day, the one group of people that have always got your back is your family. Like if stuff goes south, those are the people you can say, hey, dude, stuff went south. And they're going to be, oh, we're going to help you, because that's, and if your family like is going south, you're going to be like, what can I do to help my family? That's just a natural thing. So there's this safety within the familial structure that I think gives us access to resisting the perception, if that makes sense. Like we feel we need to intuitively, you've got something to fight for. You've got more to fight for. You've got more to protect. Isn't it an interesting concept? Like why the familial egregore is so empowering to the heart is because we become more empowered. There's more people that I need to sort of make sure that I'm there for, in a way.
That's interesting. I mean, it's also too like, because partially, I guess growing up, I had a little bit of my bigger stressor was probably my mother growing up, just because of the way she was. So she almost caused me to almost be in fight or flight mode all the time through portions of my life. So, I mean, I got used to living with that, and that was fine. Like everything's good now with that, but I'm sure that is, operates the same way as danger would.
Look, I had a tumultuous relationship with my mom.
Yeah,
as
me
well.
too.
But like interesting thing is like, as I grew up and changed, my mom changed.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's interesting. This is that familial bond thing we're talking about, that egregore, right? Like, everybody else's work that they were doing on themselves to improve themselves is affecting you and giving you a sustenance of strength. And the work that you're doing to improve yourself is giving a sustenance of strength to all the other people in that egregoric connection. And the familial egregore, I would say, is probably one of the strongest egregores that there are. I mean, your girlfriend is becoming your familial egregore as well. That's like what is happening when like a man and a woman are getting closer. So she's now in your familial egregore, you know? And so the thing is, though, that egregore becomes empowered when there's more than 3 people.
Good call. Yeah.
That now it becomes, when there's just 2, there's you and there's me. When there's 3, it becomes too hard to keep track. Is it you or me? Well, you or me or you or you or you. I don't know. It's just us. It's us. You know, in a group dynamic, the energy is much more, because the moment it's polar, you can easily differentiate it's me or it's you. Like, that thought is me or it's you. That energy is you or me. That, because I know you, you know me. I know I'm like this. I know you're like this. So it's me or you. When there's 3 of us, it becomes like very gray.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's sort of egregoric. This is like what the whole Bible is, that come in 3s. When you're in a group of 3 or more, something happens. The egregore becomes empowered because you can no longer differentiate. The rational, linguistic mind can differentiate between you and me, but in a group it becomes disempowered, and because it becomes disempowered, the heart becomes empowered.
Yeah. No, I can see that.
So like it's like it's been kicked off its throne, and it no longer has the power over the throne, because like the heart says, actually, no, there's something more important here to fight for. There's something more important here. Like, what I do here now really matters because it affects my family. When you go traveling and you're on your own and you're doing your thing, nothing matters, dude. Right? Now when I cross the road, I've got a child. I've got like, before I would just think about like my mom, or what happened if I passed away. She'd be okay. Now I've got too many factors to think about: my girlfriend, my mom, my child, my dogs. Oh my gosh, what would happen like if I were to just not be here? I better look and be careful when I cross the road. So now that actually means that my heart is forcing my persona to know its place. Where my persona was like, my persona identifies with, like, so your persona identifies with what you identify with. And every persona has its own sort of set of rules. My persona identified with like conquering fear. So now I'm having to appreciate fear. Yeah. Like, I used to run towards fear because I found it sexy. It's like, oh, fear. Yeah, let's go and check out the fear. Now I'm like, I'm mature.
And you could see this in the way people will handle failed relationships, especially. And that's what I think part of why this helped me a lot, actually. When after a couple bad relationships I was in, I was like, all right, common denominator, forget what everyone else was doing. What was I doing? Because that's the only thing I could change. And I luckily looked at it that way, and people really don't do that. It's not a common thing for that to happen. Usually they'll always, even if they start looking into the psychology of how like people can act narcissistic or codependent, they're always going to go to the other person, and what the other person is, they'll start blaming, when really like it's you. Even if you're the one being abused, like you gotta realize you didn't set boundaries and you didn't step away, unless you were like, obviously you couldn't step away, then that's a different story. But I'm talking about if like you're in a relationship that's where someone's cheating on you and you're not doing anything about it because you're too afraid to or something, or you're weird about it, or you just like, you don't feel like, you feel like it's your fault. You're not setting boundaries properly. And that was one thing I learned very early, was set boundaries. And then any issue I ever had in relationships ended. It was because I was focusing on improving myself instead of worrying about the other person. And I think it's the same type of thing you're talking about. Once you then get in these longer relationships and have more of a family around you to worry about, you're not just worrying about yourself anymore, or you are worrying about yourself, but in a way that is good for the other person as well. It's a healthy way to focus on yourself instead of just blaming everything else for your problems.
Hallelujah, brother. I would say that is like really what it comes down to, the blame game and personal responsibility. And within a family, you have to take personal responsibility. I think it's a big part.
Yeah, and I always did that with my, even when I say stuff like, yeah, me and my mom had a tumultuous relationship, and that played into everything when I was like, oh, why am I like this? Oh, I had a relationship with my mom that made me codependent. Do I blame my mom for that? Not at all. Not at all. I have never, ever said a word to my mother about that, because why would I? There's nothing, like, she did the best she could. But I recognize that, oh, maybe I am a little bit more codependent and a little more needy, and sometimes are in need of assurance from people, where it could seem overbearing, and that is maybe why my old relationships didn't work out, or there were fights when there shouldn't have been. So then I stopped doing it and I adjusted. But I didn't never blame my mother for that. But I was aware that like this type of situation when you're younger can cause this to happen to you. At least I'm just happy that I'm grateful it happened, because it actually made me more in touch with my divine feminine side than most people are. And thankfully I didn't go numb because of it, where some people will go numb if they deal with enough trauma when they're younger, you know? So to me, it was always a good thing.
I think you bring up an interesting point, you know, like the awareness of something is not blame of something, you know. So the ego will be aware, like, okay, this happened with me and my mom, this happened with me, and like this was a dynamic, but it also gives you the opportunity to transcend. The persona has to hold someone else accountable, and they've got to now be held accountable.
Exactly.
And it's a very interesting point of difference, you know. With me, when I was young, I blamed my mother for everything that happened between us, and I was angry with her, and like, you know, I felt like a resentment towards her, and I actually had to break away from her for like 2 years, where we didn't speak at all, when I was like between the age of 18, 19 and 21, somewhere around those years. Not a word to my mom, like she was dead to me. And I had to go and figure out my own crap.
Yeah.
I realized, okay, so I'm pretty messed up. Like, I'm pretty messed up. Like, in order to be able to go back to my mom and go, you know, actually, my mom's not so bad. She's actually pretty cool, you know. And that actually gave her a lot of empowerment as well in her life, because suddenly I had been judging her and blaming her growing up, and that was like chaining her down to her patterns. The moment I broke the chains, she was free to be a better version of her, and I was free to be. So it's like interesting how we chain each other with blame based upon our perception of each other, rather than being aware. Here's the interesting point. Awareness doesn't differentiate between you and me. Awareness is more, the emotion is a connection between us. It's more of what was happening between us. Perception wants to know, you did this, I did this. Awareness wants to know what was happening between us.
And
Emotional version,
I'll say it right now to people, just be aware too that you may become aware of a relationship you had with a parent figure in the past, and they may never change, even if you change yourself. There may be very little change, and you may just have to deal with it. And it does get easier even if you just change your own behavior. It will get easier. That's what I found, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is like a key thing. And I think that these egregoric connections, so the familial egregore that we're dealing on is that personal context. And that personal contact is the way in which the persona is identifying with the ego. And so the personal identification of this persona wanting to judge myself or you, or move out of it and just appreciate what's going on. Now, in the truther community, let's look at it from a slightly macrocosmic. So we're talking MILABS in the UK or MK Ultra in the US, right? Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what's going on here? What are we talking about? So it seems like there's a group egregore of people that are being worked on. And the same way the group egregore is being pushed into judging situations. So what happens in a group egregore? When I blame my mother and I judge my mother, as I did when I was young, on a group egregore, it's white people blaming black people, or black people blaming white people, or Hispanic people blaming white people or blaming black people, or Indian people being blamed, or Indian people blaming, or racism, the rich blaming the poor, blaming them for the crime, or the poor blaming the rich for the fact that they got nothing and they have to do crime. What's going on here? This whole societal, it's the same thing.
Yeah, and I think I've talked about this before on here, either on Roundtable or maybe even been with Gabe. I'm not sure which. If I have, remind me. But it's like this idea of this dissociative identity type of disorder that's created by the narcissist and codependent. And like a perfect example happens between two people, but it also can happen in groups, in my opinion, again. And you could see it like in the political spectrum, where the narcissist, think of the narcissist as the politician or news anchor that works for a right-wing news station or a left-wing news station, and think of the codependent as the public. And then the narcissist, politician or news anchor and public codependent form a shared fantasy. And if anyone from outside of that group tries to come in and tell them that this fantasy that they've created is not real and that it's a lie, they attack. They attack. And I mean, this is the same thing that happens on a relationship level. And I think it's probably the best model for what's happening probably with most people's psychology right now. I'm not sure where Franklin went. There he is.
I was just going to say, I'm listening to you. I'm just going to be moving my bunny because she's jumping around and she's got hold of a big thing. She's breaking it up. And she's making a lot of noise. But I think that what you're saying is so on point. Like if we look at the sociological, like the sociology, what about socialism and egregores? Like,
well, and also you think about that shared fantasy that they've created. That's the egregore. That's the egregore. It's the shared fantasy between the narcissist and the codependent person. So it's two people who are depending on each other to create a shared fantasy that is not real, but they're giving it energy and they're making it a reality. And the reality we're creating for each other in these groups, it's not healthy because it's being influenced by people who have bad intentions. Most of them are psychopaths.
Sorry about that, brother.
No good. No worry.
Just again, take out little Petunia. Yeah, she is. She's a cutie. You're very, very active today, huh? Very active. I can't leave her with the other bunnies because they have bitten her face off. They've attacked her. Oh, your little claws are so sharp. Please, make your little sharp claws today. Yes. So she was like that. I don't know if you were hearing all that scratching.
No, you're good.
Oh, the mic was canceling it out. I thought it was like affecting.
Yeah, no,
Might
it
put
was
you on
fine.
record. Okay. So yeah, she was like up to something, up to no good there while you were talking. I was like, it must be creating feedback. I didn't know.
No, it was
But
fine.
I think like you're completely right. Like egregores are how we get manipulated. This is why I think we've often associated the egregore with that negative, because the the controllers, is that a bad word? The manipulators of society understand the psychology. They understand all of this that we're talking about, and they use this. And
They
then
invented it. They invented it. Let's not forget the first psychologists were occultists. All of them were occultists. They invented it.
you know, I have a problem with the way the Enneagram is presented.
Oh, I know.
And I'm actually going to redo the Enneagram. Like I'm going to build it up from the ground up, redo the whole thing, because it was built by psychologists.
Mm-hmm.
And the psychologists that built it didn't necessarily fully appreciate. Like, give you an example. The number 4, right? Numerology, if you go into Vedic law, it can be associated with the power of the sun, but it's actually normally associated with the North Node. And the North Node is associated with your aspirations for the future, what you wish to build with your life, the building number. So, you know, just as an example, the number of the builder is number 4. The number 7 is associated with the past, the residue that we hold onto from the past, which is our South Node then relates to our past life saturation that's coming into us. And so our North Node will be aligned with our part of fortune to some way where we want to go with our lives in the future. So you've got this past and future alignment between 4 and 7, which doesn't seem to be embodied with this popular Enneagram systems. And the appreciation of 9, the way 9 is looked at and handled. And I look at this and I go, you know, when I think of 9, I think of like Mars. And when I think of Mars, I think of what Mars represents. It represents the completion of the body, the completion of the structure that's going to move you forward, because it's the head. It's the head of the table, right? Mm. So when I think of the Emperor, I'm actually thinking of Aries. And so if you look at the Emperor tarot card, and a lot of these tarot cards have been redeveloped and redesigned. But if you look at like the tarot card of the Rider-Waite, which is sort of based upon the basic, the original symbolism, if we can go in that way. It hasn't been sort of reworked into a new sort of paradigm. Then we should be able to get an idea. So let me share it here just so we can look at it, just as an example. And the reason I say this is I believe that like a lot of the egregoric fields of knowledge that have been given to us with this in mind. And like you can get a lot of truth, right? And just one little thing within that truth dynamic being skew.
Well, I think this is what we're finding with the work Gabe's doing and stuff like that with his Enneagram, is that there is like a model that the social engineers use, and they are basing a lot of it on the Enneagram, but it doesn't mean that necessarily is an Enneagram that's a positive thing for us to base our future on.
Yeah, you're completely right, you know.
And I think I'm pretty sure that's what he's trying to say, is like you could see these patterns of how things are playing out, because this is like a playbook basically for the social engineers to map out personality types, events, everything. So maybe it is time we make a new one.
Well, I would say an old one.
Or an old one.
The Enneagram that
Find
I'm
the
gonna,
original one.
yeah, I'm going to base it on the Kabbalah and Vedic numerology. So I'm going to find the point of contact between Kabbalah and Vedic numerology and map that onto an Enneagram, which is then like the Enneagram of the Kabbalistic cosmology, which and I'm not basing it upon necessarily Golden Dawn Kabbalistic concepts. Like true Kabbalah isn't really
Well,
true Kabbalah.
they're Kabbalah with a K or a Q. There's all these different, or a C. There's like 3 different Kabbalahs, aren't there?
Well, yeah, I mean it's the pronunciation of it is Kabbalah, and then in English pronunciation of it we call it Kabbalah, and then other pronunciations. So the C, the K are just different ways of transliterating it.
Oh, see, on Wikipedia they have the ones like the one with a Q. One that starts with a Q is a totally different system than the one that starts with a K versus the one that starts with a C. They have them as 3 different systems online.
Yeah, and this is how because people have popularized spelling it. It's all transliteration of Kabbalah. And so the Q is the way that the kof is pronounced. It's a ko, right? So it's probably a closer pronunciation to the actual word Kabbalah. And so the Jewish Kabbalah is usually written with the transliteration of the Q and ends with an H. And then these other ones are just sort of modern fad versions of it.
Yeah, because it's mostly the same information, just with added aspects of other New Age type of ideas and religions, for like older religions that are mixed in, like mystic aspects of these other religions.
The way I see Kabbalah is it's agnostic system when I look at it, and it's a personal gnosis, and so the associations shouldn't be necessarily found outside of oneself. For example, one considers a principle, and one will spend weeks, months, years considering this one principle, and one will go and sit in nature, and one will seek in nature this principle. And then one will gain a personal relevance and a relationship with that principle and gain an understanding of it so that whatever's written in books is redundant. So the true Kabbalah is a process-driven activity. Now, what we've turned it into is a theoretical-driven thing. And so the theoretical-driven stuff is what like people read about in books, and they're all talking the same crap and the same nonsense, and they're reciting the same rubbish. The same thing with the tarot. You know, and the tarot is like, once again, it's a personal. The tarot is. People will talk about where the tarot comes from and this and that, and it's quite obvious where it comes from, right? There are 22 archetypes. There are 22 Paleo-Hebrew letters. So there's no coincidence. There is no coincidence. 22 Paleo-Hebrew. Are there any other systems that have 22 letters that come from ideographs? I don't know. I think that's pretty much it. So the fact that the tarot, major arcana, is the embodiment, is the book of the Kabbalah, and it's symbolic. So if you're reading books about the Kabbalah, you're missing the point. You should be reading the tarot. You should be reading this book like this. Like this is the way I understand the Kabbalah. How it was like shown to me when I was young was like, it's not about the words in the book. That's your persona creating an identity of what you think.
Well, and then we get the fucking assholes, excuse my language, who inverted the whole, like the Sabbateans and whatnot, who inverted their tree and went into it all, got into a real crazy stuff that was totally incorrect. What's it called? Understandings of basically what they thought was true. And they started doing crazy shit, which I'm sure you could speak on better than me. I'm going to close this window really fast. Be right back. I'm right here, though. I'm listening.
Yeah, we look at the Sabbateans. It's pretty scary, you know, what the Sabbateans were up to. I can't claim to know too much about them other than I mean, Frankism is basically what
Yeah.
we
The
got
Sabbatean
from the
Frankists.
Sabbatean.
The Sabbatean Frankists. They got into a lot of dark stuff. A lot of dark stuff. And I was just listening to a conversation the other day where there's been a channel on YouTube, and I wish I could remember what it's called. I don't know why it just started popping up for me, but he's I think he's Jewish. Seems like he's Jewish, but he's been breaking it down and talking about the things that the darker aspects of why they thought certain things had to be done, and then it just kind of took off. And he actually just had a debate with a Sabbatean on his channel the other day, and the guy's rationale behind some of the things that the one, who was it? What was his name? Sabbatai Levi, the first prophet they had, their Messiah. The reasoning behind why he had to do what he did, it's so contradictory and backwards, and it's insane. And he let the guy talk, and he let the guy, I mean, everyone saw it. You could just read the comments. They're all just like, Jesus. But it's all really dark stuff. And it's all in the physical.
Yeah, that whole story of the Sabbatean, I question whether a real Sabbatean would call themselves a Sabbatean, because it contradicts the very doctrine of of Frankism. The point is, you're supposed to be secretly a Sabbatean.
Well, it seems
right?
like there is a separation between Sabbatean and Sabbatean Frankists, right? I don't know though.
I think that in the beginning there was a cult of people learning how to become Sabbateans, and once they had learned how to become Sabbateans, they were Frankists.
Yeah.
Because so Shabbatai, the first, like, what's his most prominent commandment is infiltrate
redemption by
other
sin.
religions. Yeah,
Redemption by sin, or was that the second guy who did that? Because there was two of them, right?
That's his process. His process. But like the way I understand, like, the concept of the Sabbatean is, we have a goal, and our goal is world domination.
Mm-hmm.
That's our goal. That's what we are here for. We have to drive the world into this particular model, and that goal is what matters. So it's sort of like in Christianity, the goal is to be what do you call it when you evangelist, right? You got to go out and make more Christians out of people. That's your like goal. Everybody must become Christian. Once the whole world is Christian, you've got peace. It's like, it's a concept. It's like, this is how the doctrines work, this mind controlling thing. So the idea is that to infiltrate every religion, every political structure, every legislative structure, every group, egregoric body, the Masons, the financial system, the social systems, and from within those systems, change the world so that we can manifest our Sabbatean prophecy made by our prophet. And our prophet's prophecy was that we would do this in the world, and we would create a new world order as we know it today. And so Zionism is a revamped version of Frankism. So the Sabbateans stayed secret, but once they became known as the Sabbateans, they had to. You can't exactly infiltrate an organization. Go, hi, I'm a Sabbatean. Oh, no. We know what you guys are up to. You're not going to be part of our organization. You have to come there under, like, I'm just a dude. I want to be a part of your organization. I love your organization. That's how you infiltrate. So the whole thing is infiltration. And so it sort of puts us into this perspective of being able to sort of, or puts the people who are Sabbateans into the perspective of, like, we've got to lie. We've got to pretend to be Christians. We've got to pretend to be Muslim. We've got to pretend to be Jews. We've got to pretend to be all bought and sold with this Masonic tradition, so that we can rise up.
I believe even the one guy, whether, I don't know if it was Levi or Levy, I don't know how you say his last name, or was it the second prophet guy? who, when they became Muslim, it was actually, they didn't have a choice. It was basically they were caught by the Muslims doing shit they weren't supposed to be doing. And the Muslims were like, either you convert or we kill you. And he was like, okay, yeah, no, I convert. And then he was still, then they would start secretly like trying to recruit Muslims into the Sabbatean way. So it was like, he got caught outright, but then just kept doing it. Lied.
I think that's a big part of it. And the whole thing about the Sabbatean is you're supposed to keep that part of yourself secret, because otherwise people know. And so that's why I believe the Sabbateans, like, they faded out from history. They just disappeared. And then there was Frankism, right? And when Frankism became known and people were like, oh, there's this threat of Frankism, Frankism just faded out. And then there was Zionism. Now, Zionism, the threat of Zionism is being discovered. What's next? You see, like, this is how these people wear this new cover to hide their original Sabbatean principles, because the Zionist agenda seems to be exactly what we're looking at, from the Sabbatean to the Frankist to the Zionist. The Bolshevik Revolution, what was that? That was like the beginning of a Zionist outreach program. And so they did this wonderful little social experiment called the USSR, right? Not so wonderful.
Yeah.
And who were the people persecuted? The Jews and the Gypsies by the USSR, right? So, like,
well, and it's weird. It's weird because it does seem like there is another group aside from them that might be more powerful at this point, and I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong with that. But I don't know if the Zionists are on top anymore. But I don't know if that's just because they've evolved into something else. Because it seems like the power is now based out of Sweden and UK. Like, it's a British, Swedish. I mean, but the Britain still seems to be, like, the British Zionists seem to be connected still. But it seems like there's something in Sweden going on that is really the root.
I think they've become the democracies, because Sweden and the UK is all about democracy, aren't they? Like, it's really their big thing. We need to like everybody's got to have a say. But it's okay if everybody has a say, if everybody's been mind controlled to say the same thing.
Yeah.
So wokeism.
And the Swiss, of course, are the bank. They have the Swiss banks, and they have the only neutral country in the whole entire world that doesn't have to. Well, actually, I don't know. Have they joined? Didn't they just join NATO or no?
I'm not sure exactly what their affiliation is, but you're right. Everything seems to come back there. That little northern part of Europe.
They have their little CERN, that little CERN, little particle collider that's right there in Sweden, next to Italy and France, and it's all right. It's connected to all three, I think, of them. So it's right in that hub. It's a weird spot. I mean, there's friggin' particle accelerators everywhere, but
yeah, I mean, science has become the new religion. So they infiltrated all the other religions, and then now they're hiding within the religion of science. And so they're making science become more woke, because they have to undermine the religion from within.
Well, you know, it's weird. But then they have these really pagan, or fake pagan, like, it's almost like a fake pagan type of way about them, and how they do their rituals, and especially in like Sweden and CERN, and when they're doing these occult rituals that make all the Christians go really crazy and the truthers go really crazy, because it looks evil what they're doing, but I don't even know if that's what they believe in. I don't know what that is that they're doing.
I think what that is it's woke programming. They're programming the group Egregore.
Yeah.
Of the people who live there, because there's where a lot of important financial decisions are being made. by huge corporate entities that base themselves there because of, like you say, banking interests and such and such and such. So, and Davos as well, you know. So we've got like Davos, we've got the place where the Pope hangs out, you know, and we've got the northern little corner, if we can call it that. And so they all seem to be like, you know, England will condemn Israel for what they're doing in Palestine and then send them a box of bombs for Christmas. You see, that's how these buggers operate. America, at least, they're like a little bit more altruistic. They're like, no, they're our friends. We're keeping them safe. We're protecting them from these. The British are like, no, terrible people, terrible. Look what you've done. Would you like a box of bombs? We've got some bombs for you. You know? But officially, we think you're terrible. You know? Like on paper, there's this two-faced agenda. And I think that two-faced agenda is like a big part of what we're witnessing. And so that the group Egregore needs to be programmed with these, can I use the word satanic values?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what it is really all in the end satanic.
Yeah.
And by satanic, we don't have to necessarily mean satanic in a devil with a pitchfork way. We could mean satanic in a totally selfish, like a Sabbatean way, a way where there is a darker entity, or a way where it's more Luciferic and more like based on what the individual personally wants to gain for themselves in these groups. But it's definitely not about natural law. And it's definitely a lot of breaking of natural law and making people do things against their will.
Absolutely. And I think this is a big part. So I think like changing our occult perceptions, like I've noticed the identity of the occult has changed in the last 30 years, like big time. And I've just watched it change and I'm like, interesting. Like terms, meanings of terms, like becoming, it's very subtle. It's not even obvious. It's very subtle. And certain perceptions of how to relate to certain occult principles, they've been skewed a little. And then I look at this, like this, the reason I bring up this Emperor card is because it's the fourth card, right? So we're talking about the builders, talking about on one level, the head of the serpent, right? And now we're talking about the Emperor, the head of the power structure, right? And we're talking about Aries, the head of the human body. And we can see the throne. And we can see as he's sitting on the throne here.
There's rams everywhere.
Sorry?
There's rams everywhere on that throne.
Yeah, there has to be. Because we're talking about time. Right? We're talking about that Saturn. We're talking about the Saturnial devotion. And we'll notice in the background here, we've got the water which runs behind his throne in the distance, which is interesting. So that's like life in there. And then we've got these huge yellow mountains, which I think represent the powers of the sun. We can see once again here, we've got the Ankh, which represents this. And it's in alignment with the fact that he's got the crown of the sun on his head. And he's got the sphere of the sun in his hand. So he's got these three aspects of it. But his cloak is all about the passions. And he's wearing the passions on his body, but he's also got ice cold armor on. Ice cold armor, which represents sort of, on some level, detachment. So this is about using your passions to get what you want, and controlling and taming your passions and being able to choose. And so we look at this concept, like, for example, so when I look at the number 9, I see the number 9's connection with the number 4. for example. And this tarot card is explaining. So there's like showing us a secret relationship between Chesed and Yesod in the Tree of Life, which you won't find in books. But it's there if you look for it. And then you'll see the throne. Okay, so like you mentioned, all the rams on the throne. So now we're talking about a Saturnial element here as well. And so the Saturnial element is, I think, quite fundamental to the number 5 as well, because now we're talking about the use of the will. We use about severity. Time is pretty severe. Time doesn't give you allowances. It doesn't give you a second chance. It's severs your connection with the past and forces you to go into the future. So it's like there's this intensity of the throne that he's sitting on and it's gray. It's lifeless, right? Lifeless in a sense is what like that symbolizes. So you've got this really interesting constellation of forces here showing us connections which don't seem to come up in the psychologist version of the Enneagram. And I'm using this as an example to give us an insight, and you'll find the same thing. I find the same thing with, okay, let me give you an example of something that really bugs me. And it's really an issue, for me personally, on a personal level. I find it Josh, now's not the time. I'm on a live. Okay. You enjoy that salty lassi. I'm on a live. Don't disturb me. I love you, my boy. He's come to brag about drinking a salty lassi. I made him a whole lot of salty lassi last night, and I wouldn't let him have it all because it was like a whole liter of it. So, okay, I'm going to use this as an example, right? Just here is the infiltration of the Vedic cosmology from my perception. Look at the way this image has been represented. So here we've got the Shtutla Sharira, which is like your physical body, okay? And they call it the Annamaya Kosha. So you've got these 5 koshas. And you've got the Shukshma Sharira, which is like the subtle bodies, right? Now they put it here as one subtle body, but you can see they've got the 3 pointing out here, which is quite important because you've got the Karana Sharira, which is the causal body, which is the Anantamaya Kosha. Anant meaning bliss, basically, and the bliss overpowering the Maya, where the Vishna Maya overpowering the Kosha is relating to the higher mind potential, right? The philosophical union of understanding the second principle of Hermes, for example. And the prana relates to the energy body, which is the life force. The prana Maya is the life force over the Maya Kosha. And then the mana Maya Kosha has got to do with what we consider the mana. The mana is the mind, the mental potential, which is the balance between the emotional. So, but here's the thing that gets me, right? You notice how they put the Karana Sharira in the middle, the small one.
Mm-hmm.
And they put the Shtutla Sharira on the outside, the physical body. So they want us to believe this map that the physical dimension is the big one and the spiritual dimensions are the little one. Now, when we think of dimensionality in terms of 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D, right? 7D is not smaller than 4D. 4D fits into itself almost exponentially to make 5D. So 5D is exponentially bigger than 4D. And 6D is exponentially bigger than 5D.
Yeah.
And 7D is exponentially bigger than
this is like what they did with science and the word quantum. Because quantum was never small. Quantum used to be everything, large.
Yeah.
And now it's the micro when it used to be the macro.
So they've inverted this.
Yeah.
And when I want to draw this properly, I want to draw it so that the spiritual body is actually the big one. I want the Karana Sharira to be this outside body. if I was going to draw it properly. And the way that they've represented it in this image with the Shukshma Sharira, it troubles me, because you've got the 3 fundamental bodies, right? Now, these 5 koshas, like when you look at Pranamaya, I relate that to the etheric body. Vijnamaya, I relate that to the principles of the astral body. So the Manomaya, I relate that to the embodiment of the Anantamaya within the structure of the etheric and the astral, because this reflects itself within this. This contains all of these. Everything is contained within the causal body. The causal body isn't some small little thing which is an attachment to the physical body. Everything is contained within the causal body. And then when you look within that causal body, you see that that causal body reflects itself below the firmament as what we can call the Manomaya. That's the reflection of the causal body below the firmament. And this then has the polarity of the Vijnamaya and the Pranamaya, which is the relationship of the higher spiritual wisdom, intuition of the Vijnanamaya, or the energetic structuring potential of the perception, which is the Pranamaya. And so this one is related to awareness and emotional intelligence and intuition. This one is related to the logos and the structuring of the word and the way in which linguistic structure regulates and directs life force through these. So I'm just using this as another example, just to like, they've taken our spiritual and our occult sciences and they're inverting everything. They're turning it all inside out. And they've got these wonderful little, this is stops right now. I'm just going to go lock that door quickly.
Good. So how's everyone doing out there tonight? I hope everyone's having a good time. We're just taking a quick break while Franklin goes and closes his door. And we're
Sorry
back.
about that. I had to go and lock the door. Otherwise, he's just going to keep walking in and talking to me. He's learned from his mother a lack of boundaries, which I'm continually having to teach him because she doesn't have boundaries with him. So he only gets boundaries from dad. And normally those boundaries involve like I delete Minecraft every once in a while. He loses everything. It's to start from the beginning. I'm like, I don't care.
Good.
I told you, I
Minecraft's
was
a weird
like,
game.
We're gonna take
Minecraft's
action. That's it. They
Minecraft.
did Minecraft, and then you don't play it for a month. You know,
Minecraft's a
months,
weird
whatever.
game, man. I have some stories about that I never played it, but I've seen stuff on it that has freaked me out online on YouTube, like searching for other things, seen like my friend's life in a game in Minecraft. Someone recorded, like they were just playing, I guess, created their own version of Minecraft, and it matched all these things that were happening at my friend's house. And I was like, this is way too weird for me to start jumping into this right now. I just ignored it. But it was like a weird, like almost like an AI had created a video based on things going on around my friend and knew everything about him and made a character in the game and then put it on YouTube for me to find. It was bizarre.
Well, I would say that I would say that you probably found it because of your awareness field expanding. Like you were drawing it out of the universe towards you.
It was just, it was odd, man. Creeped me out a little bit.
I can imagine it would have that effect. Yeah. So like this is something that's like very close to my heart, you know, like this nature of the egregoric communication with the personal self. And it's very interesting. It's like that guru principle. It's like when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And the teacher doesn't always come like, "Hi, I'm your teacher." The teacher could be John, Tom, Bob, Mary, Ann, and Tom could start a sentence on the street corner. Mary could continue the sentence 10 yards down the road. By the
Yeah.
time you get to the end of the road, you've had 10 people and they've constructed a sentence for you. And you're like, wow. You know? And so in the same way, we can now attract this out of the digital world. But like what you say, like, is it natural or synthetic? Is AI watching you and knowing what you are being communicating with your friends, and you know what's going on, and AI is like,
Well, and I know that there was a whole thing with Project Mayhem, and there was a Project 2020, Project 2012 before that I think changed to 2020, where like there were all these Anons who were playing these ARGs, like these alternative reality games, and making videos on YouTube. And there were two AIs one was a really religious AI, one was an atheist AI. I think it was called Tyler. And this was a whole big project and experiment in which they were trying to create events in these ARGs that would then manifest in the real world. It was real bizarre. And it happened all was happening right before COVID, and then it all disappeared. Most of it was wiped. So I don't know what the hell happened, but people might know what I'm talking about. It was really, really creepy.
I think like what you're talking about is this, these AR games. I think it is quite a head trip, because there's billions of people out there playing AR games.
And when they start blending, when they start trying to blend, and when one of them I had found was like, it had the stated goal of actually breaking, and like they wanted their game to eventually affect reality and then manifest in the reality and it become part of the reality. And it was a political thing. Like during the first time I think Trump was running for office back in like 2016, I was seeing this. And I was like, this is weird as hell. Like they're trying to change reality using like mixed reality and mixed events that are partially real and partially based on a game that they're playing online, and then they're going to these places in real life. It's bizarre.
I have this thing, like, and it's an issue for me. My boy's now 8. And he's discovered the internet, and he's discovered like Google, and he's like, I'm like, oh shucks. You can't hide him away. You can only protect him for so much. And like now he wants to play these games, and oh my gosh. So my little boy, I caught him singing this song. I was like, what song are you singing? And he's, oh, I'll show you. And it's like these guys singing on toilets. And it's like some toilet track. Have you seen it?
No.
Oh my gosh. It's just like, oh shit. How do you deal with this?
Yeah.
It's like this silly thing where it's like, it's a music video and the people are in a restaurant sitting on toilets. I'm like, something wrong with this. And this face keeps coming out of the toilet to sing to you.
Jeez.
And it's like, I don't I don't know what they were thinking, but like you say, like there's the narrative is being tested. Like we are being tested to see just how deranged we can go. Have you not seen this nonsense?
I really haven't seen that video.
Toilet music video. Vid, face coming out of toilet, and it's this most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Skibbity toilet. Oh my gosh, skibbity toilet. Oh no, it's bad, man. It's bad.
Sounds bad.
Okay, let me give you a little insight into it so that you can understand just how bad. Like, so my 8-year-old was like showing me this. And I was just like, there's something like really mentally ill going on here. Let me see if I can find this on YouTube.
Well, what they do is if it sounds like, if it's like toilet type of humor in a way, it's like the more depraved and inverted they can make things, the better. So if they can introduce it in a way.
It's like they are trying to okay, so let me mute myself and we're looking at this now just to get an idea of the depravity that we're facing in the world.
Jesus.
You see my face going skibbity, skibbity, doody doody pee, going skibbity, skibbity. You see my face going skibbity, skibbity, doody doody pee.
I'm finding this very strange because I'm running a 250 megabyte upload and a 250 megabyte download, and suddenly that I'm trying to show this video, it's like my internet seems like it doesn't want to show, but it's not my broadband. I do a broadband test in the background. My broadband's flying, like 200 megabytes upload and download plus. So very strange.
It's weird just even seeing, this is really about surveillance, huh?
Preparing for a war, toilet papers on the
Oh, Jesus
floor.
Christ.
Skibbity, yeah. I'm preparing for a dump. But don't you try to flush.
He's preparing for a dump because there's toilet paper on the floor, but don't you try to flush. They're mixing surveillance with toilets, with like just how messed up is this?
Finance, surveillance, toilets. I mean, it also reminds me of like an inverted version of that cartoon in Shadow, or the cartoon, but the animation in Shadow, though, it's actually really positive.
Skibbity what? Skibbity what? Skibbity who? Skibbity yeah. Skibbity what? Skibbity who? Skibbity yeah. Skibbity what? Skibbity who? Skibbity yeah. Skibbity what? Skibbity who? Skibbity yeah.
Anyway, I think we've seen enough of that rubbish. It's just this is where we're at, man. You know.
Oh, that's an old song too, huh? 2018.
Yeah.
Is that from Russia?
I don't know where it's from, but like I'd heard the track somewhere before, and it's got like a tune that's based on other tracks, I think, remixed from other like well-known tracks. So they've taken something that's in the Egregore consciousness, well-identified dance track, and they've turned it into this weird surveillance toilet thing, skibbity-dee, skibbity-doo, whatever. And so I heard my son singing this skibbity-dee, skibbity-doo, and I thought, like, that sounds familiar. And I'd heard about this toilet thing once before. I'd seen people talking about it, and I didn't think much of it. And then my 8-year-old came, and I was like, holy crap. He discovered this on his own. I was like, where was your mother? Like, she leaves him on the computer to just do as he wants. And so he discovers this kind of stuff. But this is the kind of egregoric, like,
control and manipulation that we've got going on in the world at the moment. And we're being completely sort of brainwashed into this form of normality. And what was it you were talking about earlier? The rituals in the northern part of the world. I think these things are all connected. They want us to be ridiculous. They want us to live in a fantasy world that's so removed from reality. Transhumanism is also being pushed there, obviously, right? Like the robotic transhumanist.
I mean,
and
the culture of the
surveillance.
absurd is definitely being pushed. I mean, clown world to the max.
And the metaphor is telling you that it all comes from shite.
Yeah.
And then they're giving you a subliminal message, don't flash. We know that this is a load of shite, but please don't flash. So this is like really like the extent of the kind of mind control. And a lot of the kids, I mean, this thing gets highly listed on Google, right? The fact that you find it, like this particular, how many views does this video have?
Probably millions, I'm guessing. I'm actually trying to...
205K thumbs up.
Yeah, it's
48
insane.
million views in the last 1 year.
And you know what? I think that I was trying to reverse the word and put it into Hebrew, like basically put it into Hebrew, which would be reversing it, seeing what it would come out to. Maybe IDBIX. It looks like, which is IDBI is a bank. I don't know if it's gonna. I mean, there's that weird Dybbuk again. The Dybbuk, because Dybbuk is actually a demon, right? I think people were trying to make like people were saying COVID reversed was Dybbuk, but I think the actual word is Dybbuk. So Dybbuk, I think, is like a reversal of that word. The skibbity, Dybbuk's.
A debacle.
Well, Dybbuk is a demon in Hebrew, a Dybbuk.
Yeah. And so you can get involved in a debacle.
Mm-hmm.
Debacle, which is interesting how these words all sort of come to the same point.
Mean, and there was that movie, the Dybbuk, right? The Bada book with the demon entity that came out of the child's book or something like that.
I didn't watch it. I've heard it spoken of. Yeah, it's interesting. Is that there's a lot of stuff I haven't watched. Like I spent a lot of my life in the wilderness.
Dybbuk is a Jewish
so
demon.
There's so many films that I didn't watch from, because I like hardly watched any films between like the mid 90s and
Remember earlier when you said you brought up the word, I think it was adherent.
Adherent.
Didn't you bring that up like right at the beginning? Because you were saying, because you were talking about how we cling to our personality, I think, or something like that, or clings to the ego.
But adherent is a good word.
So Dybbuk means adhere. In like
Control.
The Hebrew, like the translation is adhere or cling. The Hebrew verb dabak, D-A-B-A-Q.
Yeah. And so to adhere is you better listen.
Or if it's clinging, it's possessing, attaching.
Yeah. It's to adhere means like you better adhere to the rules. You better cling to the rules. You better be attached to the rules. Adherence, In other words, you better all be here, present.
Yeah.
In our little whatever we've created here. This is how we behave, which is the opposite of coherence. Or maybe not the opposite, but it's definitely on a parallel. You got coherence and you got adherence. Coherence is when you're using your own rational to be present. Adherence is when you're using somebody else's rational or some other rational to be present wherever that's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So you can be adherent or you can be coherent. I don't think you can be both.
That makes sense. Let's see really fast.
And that music is a bit incoherent.
Yeah, it is.
It's a broadcasting incoherency as normality. Normalizing incoherence.
Well, you want to know it's
And of
interesting?
course, it starts with toilet paper on the floor.
Did you know that Coherent was also a Unix operating system clone?
Is that so?
Yeah, it's called Coherent. I didn't know that.
Interesting.
That's weird.
Well,
these
I
people, man.
suppose the people who wrote Unix was an open source community, right?
And then now Coherent's used by IBM and stuff like that, so they just took it.
Because Unix was written as an alternative to IBM systems.
Mm-hmm.
And it was people who didn't want to be controlled that wrote Unix. And so all of these Linux spin-offs, I think are, I don't know much about it. I can't claim to have any knowledge of software and stuff, but just the little that I've come across, it seems that the Unix was such a good code that the three-letter agency started using it because it was better than any corporate crap that was ever made. Like Windows, IBM, all of those guys were making a certain kind of code, and that code involved them having control of your machine. And then a group of people were like, what? They don't have to have control of your machine. You can have your own machine. And you don't have to have viruses, they're malware and crap in your machine. So they came up with this fairly stable form of Unix code that was so stable that the CIA said, well, we're going to base our service on this code. Because you know why? It can't be controlled from the outside, which is an interesting sort of concept. I mean, that's what makes Apple so good, right? Because Apple is written on Unix code.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're not allowed to sell the code to you. They just put their shiny skins. They put their Apple skin over it. Their Safari or whatever it is, but whatever they put their Apple skin over the Unix code, and then it makes it feel like it's nice Apple feel and easy to use and looks good and all of that. But the Unix is basically what it is. And then you look at what a eunuch is, right? A eunuch is a castrated male. So there's something interesting in that whole concept of a male becoming a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is part of the whole woke agenda, is it not?
And it's part of the occult agenda too.
Part of the which agenda?
The occult agenda as well, the dark occult agenda.
Yeah.
This is a huge confusion of basically spiritual planes and confusing what different. I know how there's supposed to be levels of whether you're on the etheric or whether you're in the afterlife, and I'm not well versed enough to speak on this, but I believe it's if you're male, your soul or something like that, and in the astral is more feminine than masculine, and it kind of flips, and I don't know what the fuck. To me, I don't give a shit about any of that. Find balance, and I feel like you'll balance all the way through.
Well, the whole idea of to remove the masculine potential it's very interesting, because when we look at the Taoist concept of yin and yang, right? So the yin is that internalizing, and it's cold,
Mm-hmm.
and it's dark. And the yang is that expressive, externalizing, and it's light, and it's hot, and it's active, right? So they want us to be sort of lost in this active state. They don't want us to be internalizing. They don't want us to be looking at our internal realities. They want us lost in the worldly pursuits of money, fame, and validation. And so those that aren't able to play the money and the fame world game, they will play the validation game. And others will play the fame game. And those that don't have the charisma to play the fame game can play the money game. They've given us 3 games, in a sense, to play. And if you can't play the fame or the money game, then you're going to be playing the validation game, according to their model. So it's like these 3 proverbial like fail-safe traps been set for humanity that like will catch most of us. And then of course there's those that don't fit into those traps. But they've sorted that out because they've wired into the system that the egregoric consciousness doesn't tolerate difference. So within the group mind, if you're disagreeing with the group beliefs, the group will then be trained to attack you. And so this is the next extension. And then when the group wasn't attacking people fast enough, they had to create bots to train the people to attack. So that on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, when somebody said something that disagreed with the group, that person would then be attacked and attacked and attacked by the bots, and insulted, belittled, humiliated. And when that wasn't enough, then the powers that control these structures would then ban these accounts from Facebook, Twitter, whatever. So they've got like all these different models that they've created for us, and it got to the point where they banned Trump.
Yeah. Well, and then obviously this all moved into the real world, and then now it happens in schools and in classrooms, and it's gotten a little better now, but
didn't want to get too into politics, but I've got to laugh at how Twitter banned Trump, right? So Trump's reach around buddy, right? We know who Trump's reach around buddy is. Got out his little sword and went musketeering forward, and he was like, well, I will buy Twitter, change Twitter, and now, hey, Trump, come on, Twitter's for you. Now Twitter is Trump's voice piece.
is he using Twitter still? He uses it, but he still uses his program too, which is so weird.
He doesn't have to use
who the hell
Twitter
uses
anymore.
I mean,
Twitter is for him.
yeah,
Like,
I mean,
the guy
I don't
who
know.
owns Twitter speaks for him.
I don't even know if he posts his own posts, but it's interesting how he still uses Truth Social too. Like anyone reads it. I don't know who the hell's on that. Who's on Truth Social? Who has that? There are people on this, I guess. I don't know.
I think that there's a financial interest there.
Oh yeah. He's
put his money tied up there. If you want to see what I'm saying, come and read my thing.
This whole thing is that, I mean,
I need the
X Twitter is a data collection thing for the AI system that's coming. I mean, it's creating all the digital twins that DARPA needs. I mean, and remember Google X had the selfish ledger, which talked about all of this. And then Google X left Google and they became X. But it wasn't the same X, or is it the same X? We don't really know because they disappeared in 2016 after that viral video came out where it would say it would epigenetically program all of us through our devices. And now we have a system named X where Elon's already admitted he's not the full owner, and there's a whole board that he has to report to, and he's just basically a front man for it. So what the fuck's going on?
X is Saturn.
I mean, X is a lot of things.
Yeah, so like it
But
used
Saturn
to be
is
Twitter,
definitely.
and you used to tweet.
And the weird thing is, the odd thing, and I mean, we have the language of the birds, obviously, so that's part of the Twitter thing. I mean, the birds are important to the occult. But today, I think it was national, or yesterday would be now for both of us, was a International Twitter Day or National Twitter Day, and they still call it National Twitter Day. I heard it on the radio when I was driving before, and I was like, what? It's called X, but you're still calling it Twitter. What is this linguistic spell that's going on with these two, where the name
I thought it
cannot be
was-
fully changed?
Wasn't it St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah, I think so. Yesterday, or 2 days ago, so the 17th
2
was
days
St.
ago.
Patrick's Day. The 18th is National Twitter Day. Apparently, I'd never heard of it before, but there's no Twitter anymore. So what is this weird thing where people still say they tweet, but they have X? What is going on with that? That is something.
Is that an American thing? Must be.
It might be. Does it not
Is it
happen out there as
international?
much? Do people say X out there? I feel like it's almost the entire Western world is like still saying both. Like I've heard Australians say it. I've heard British people say it, like where they don't know whether to say I've tweeted or I'm on X. They like say both.
It's interesting, huh? And that whole revamping of it, I think that they had to rebrand because the Musketeer killed Twitter. He took
Wow.
all their credibility away from them. He basically exposed their BS to
Yeah.
the point where the whole world was like, this Twitter is crap. And then he had to say, listen, I'm
Which should have been obvious to everyone.
Okay.
And this should have been obvious that it was horrible to everyone. And it's still horrible, but it should have been obvious from the start.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with
And
you. on that.
Grok, I think, is a demon, and the name of a demon. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, right.
I agree. I have seen that. The word Grok also means ugly, I believe.
Yes, I mean, someone could have made this up, but I'm pretty, at least, they at least had it as a demon in a game. I know I saw that somewhere in one of those old PlayStation type games.
I think it was a giant.
A giant? That would
Yeah.
kind of make sense.
One of the Nephilim. Am I right or wrong?
Anyone know in the chat? Nephilim, G-Rock,
Grok.
Nephilim. Man, there's so many articles about it now. I feel like it was so much easier to find this a few months ago.
I'm sure I've come across that somewhere years ago in some literature somewhere. But anyway,
Nephilim, VI, Grok Comics. Yeah, maybe Tomb Raider has it in it. I'm sure it was something.
no, I seem to remember it. I mean, we as children, boys would refer to a girl if she was like but ugly as a Grok. That was like literally what we used to say, like you know. So like little kids when we were like 14 or whatever. So that was like it was washed into our egregoric word usage as children. We were using them. We just didn't know what we were saying. Definitely seems like a form of chaos magic personified that makes Egregore. Well, I think that the Egregore is very much a part of the occult, because the occult is channeling forces that are integral to maintaining structure. And that structure is maintained between individuals, between groups, between particles. So it's like it's borrowing that potential, that energy. But yeah, brother, I think we've gone over the 2-hour mark, and
Yeah, we have. I just saw.
there's just one thing that we didn't really cover, And the self-image as it relates to the nuclear family, the habituality, psychosis and possession, Ahrimanic programming. I think these are all sort of one thing really in a sense, right? So the Ahrimanic programming is what we've been talking about, that socialist agenda, right? And then the destruction of the nuclear family. I think this is a huge part of breaking apart and separating the persona from the ego on a fundamental personal level. Because when you are unity, when you are unified, your persona and your ego work together, and they sort of are in a state of harmony. And then you can be yourself. But when your ego and your persona are disassociated from each other, then you get what we call clumsy people that don't know how to be themselves. They don't know who they are. And you become what we could call, what's the word? To be...
Autistic.
Well, I was thinking flippant. Like
Socially awkward.
what... Yeah, that too. But the word I'm thinking about is basically when you're not consistent. You know, today I'm going to help an old lady cross the road. Tomorrow I'm going to throw stones at an old lady.
Yeah.
What's that? Fickle nature. And I think that we become fickle when we have this disassociation, because like you might be good one minute and really bad the next minute, and it's like it's all the same to you. It doesn't matter. There's no consistency. And I think that consistency is interesting, because when we're talking about habituality, we habitualize one thing that creates inconsistency as a habit. What an interesting concept. Habitualizing inconsistency.
Well, and this is like everything that MK Ultra and all the programming that came after it, all the separate programs that came after it, like MK Search, and I think there were even more that it was rolled into. This is what they were the best at. I mean, they habitualized inconsistency in individuals. They turned off they could bring out multiple alters of personality based on various methods of trauma and hypnosis combined, that they were able to somehow perform on individuals. It's crazy. And then you're exactly like what you're saying. They had no consistent person at that point. They could be anyone you want them to be. There's no control over who they are.
Flip the switch.
They're no longer their own person, because one person comes up to them and says a code word or something, and they've lost control of their ego, their identity, everything.
I wonder whether this video that we were looking at, this skibbity doo, whatever, is a flipping of the switch.
It's probably a what do they call it? What's the word for something that's used as it's like a trigger.
Yes,
it's probably
exactly.
a trigger. Yeah.
I mean, you're in the film industry. What are your thoughts on Fantasia? Hope I'm saying the right one.
The Disney movie?
Yes.
I mean, I haven't looked into Fantasia too much, but I know a little bit about it, and I know more probably about Disney in general. I mean, there's a lot of social and cultural triggers within Disney that are used in, obviously, these brainwashing programs. I don't know why, but maybe it's because they're introduced at such an early age, and because they have occult principles mixed in.
Do you know how many times it was released?
Fantasia? No, I'm not sure. I remember seeing the first one. Never was a fan. For some reason, there was something weird about it to me when I was a kid. I didn't like it, which is interesting.
It was first released in the 40s.
Okay.
And the people reacted really badly to it. It was a complete and utter loss, a complete and utter flop financially. So what they did was they took it and they revamped it up and they released it again some years later in the next decade. Once again, it was again a complete and utter flop, a complete and utter failure. People wouldn't have it. People refused to watch it. Then they released it again within the next 1 to 2 decades. Again. It was a complete and utter flop. Then they released it again. What was it, like the 80s or something?
I'm trying to look
And again
now.
in the
I'm
90s. And they released it again in 2000.
Apparently, you had
And-
Huxley working on parts of the one in the 40s.
Yeah, but my point is, when you make a film and it's a flop, you throw more money in it, and you release it again, and it's a flop again, and then you throw more money at it, and you release it, and it's less of a flop. And so it took them like almost 50, 60 years to get us to actually accept Fantasia.
I feel like I saw the 40s version, but I don't know. I can't remember which one I saw, but I remember just intuitively as a kid, I did not like it. There's something weird about it.
They've hidden the truth from us. If you read here, they'll say that there have been multiple re-releases of the original Fantasia throughout the years, including a 1990 release for its 50th anniversary.
Okay.
But now when you go back to the earlier releases, okay, so let's look at this. 1940, Fantasia was flop. 1940, Fantasia lost money. I wonder whether we'll be able to actually get much of this information, whether the AI is going to throw crap at us.
Maybe in the archive.
So, okay, so losing money due to high production costs, that's what they say, was initially a box office failure. Right?
Yeah.
Second release. Second release of Fantasia lost money. Now suddenly they jump us. So they released it in 2000. It was a financial disappointment. They've never made any money out of it. It has been released over and over and over again. They've not made any money out of it.
Yeah, they
What
had
does
all
that
these.
tell you?
They had all these crazy important people apparently who worked on it. Were psychologists and cultural commentators. Obviously, Huxley. Edwin Hubble just worked on it. Jesus Christ.
So now they tell you, I ask for the second release of Fantasia, lost money is my Google search. You know what they show me? 2000. They don't even show me 1990s release or the releases before them. I believe it's been released like half a dozen times at least. And every one of those has been a financial failure. So that money has cost so much to be put into our Egregore, and when you watch the film, you go, my gosh,
Yeah,
that's
weird.
a trigger film.
It's dark. There's
It's
a darkness to it.
It's triggering MK Ultra training. I'm pretty sure. That's what it seems like to me.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first Disney movie, obviously. They say there's same thing with the Alice in Wonderland type of programming. There's what's the other film that they use? Oh, I feel like there's another one. There's a bunch of them. I feel like where they just
I couldn't watch it.
Yeah, Fantasia.
I couldn't watch it. I tried watching it a few times. I just thought this is crazy.
I'm not sure if I
Just
ever
doesn't fit.
finished it when I was a kid. I didn't like it. I just intuitively had a weird feeling about it. Probably whoever had it on, I probably just walked out of the room or didn't watch it. Because I can't remember finishing it either.
I remember in 1990, it was a big rave again. And I was in high school already. I was like, oh, this crap.
I would have been 3.
They one of the earlier versions they try to put on telly or whatever, and I'd sort of seen a bit of it, and I thought, this just looks like total crap. Like, what is this stupid nonsense? Even as a little kid, I thought it was stupid. And by the time I was like 12, I was like, oh gosh, can't watch that rubbish. So I remember the last time they put that stupid nonsense in front of me, I was like, what's this? But yeah, I've never watched the whole Fantasia. I've never have, which is interesting. But like, so Google won't allow you. So list of all release dates for Fantasia film. Let's see if they give me a list. Okay, so it was released in 1940. Then it was re-released in 1941. Then it was released in 1985. Then it was released in 1990. Then it was released in 2000. And then it was re-released in 2008.
Yeah, they called Fantasia 2000 too, huh? That was the re-release in IMAX.
And I don't even think they've got all of the dates here. I think they've hidden some of it from us. It's like
there was there
looks
like there was a 60s re-release too, because on the wiki I can see this weird psychedelic 1969 poster for a re-release.
So how's this? I'm looking at a list of dates here for the releases of it, right? And guess what you don't see here? The 2000 release isn't even on the list.
It's not on the list, yeah.
So 1940, they don't even have the 1940 release here. They've got the 1941 release here, right?
The 69 release has a bat on the cover.
Then there was a 1985 re-release. Then there was a 1990. There was a 2000 release. Then there was a 2008 release. Then there's actually been a 2020 re-release in Australian markets and France. Like they've been trying, and as far as I know, like most of them, they will never ever make back the money they've lost on Fantasia.
Yeah.
Do you want to know the irony of it?
Just like all the woke films that they're making too.
It's not even copyrighted anymore, is it?
I don't know. I mean, most of the songs probably know if they're using. I know they use Beethoven a little bit in one of them, right?
How long does a copyright last for films?
It depends. Depends on.
Is it 50 years? Legally?
I think it can vary. It depends.
Does it depend?
I think it does. It depends on if the artist has an estate, what type of song it was. There's probably, I'm sure there's a bunch of freaking things.
No, I mean for the original film, like the 1940 version. I think the 1940 version is not copyrighted. Am I right? Like film copyright licensing period. Film
Might be right.
Copyright. Expires after, is it 50 years? I don't know. I really don't know about this stuff.
Fantasia will enter the public domain on January 1st, 2036.
So
50
years after the end of the year of when the first was made available in public, the copyright expires.
Well, actually, this is from the 1940 film, so 40 to 36. So no, that's more than that. 1940 to 2040 minus 4, 74 years, 75 years, basically. Right? Or not 75. Yeah, no.
Not you, brother, not you. It's my son shouting
No,
through the
90
door.
for
Sorry,
90.
I couldn't hear you. He was like telling me about that he went to have a poo and
Well, no, 'cause if the first film's 2040, or not for 1940, this is saying 2036. So it's almost 100 years.
Yeah, but the 2036 might be from the 1986 release.
Yeah, you might be right. I don't know which one it's saying it's from. I'm on the 1940 wiki. That's why.
Because well, I don't know, like I find it says here that a copyright expires after 50 years in USA. It just means that they don't have exclusivity. In the USA, for works created on or after January 1978, copyright protection lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years or 95 years from publication for works made for hire.
So this seems like it's going by the 95 years then if it's from 1940.
But that's for works made after 1978.
Yeah, which is weird, but maybe that's what they get by re-releasing it.
Prior
the re-release might put it in that.
1978, work needed to be renewed after 28 years to maintain copyright. Oh,
that's why they renewed it. There you go.
The copyright license. So you have to, okay.
There you go.
And then they changed the law in 1978 to make it for 70 years plus the life of the author.
Mm-hmm.
Or 120 years from the date of creation. So a film is considered a work made for hire, meaning it was created by the employee of a company. The copyright term is 95 years from the date of publication or 120 years from the date of creation, whichever comes first. Wow. Wow. Hey?
It's wild.
It just doesn't make sense. You know, that
did you see the image I sent you in the private chat of the 1969 poster? Pretty demonic. It's like a demon bat in the center.
Yeah, scary, hey?
And you got those psychedelic mushrooms and stuff on the bottom with the horses, the unicorn horses or whatever the hell they are.
And that green color is like, it makes me cringe.
Yeah.
The colors that they've used is cringe. Like I literally feel my skin tightening around my body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. So like, yeah, this isn't a new thing. And this, like, they were working on these social experiments to control our mental frame, to program the egregore so that our personas will be trapped in these egoic battles with the egregore, so that we are having to fight against the egregore of our society because the egregore has been programmed. And this has been running now for a long time. People think that all of this mind control and MK Ultra is new, but when we start to really look at the source of it, we see that this is old. And we've got evidence of it in the 1940s. It doesn't mean it wasn't happening before the 1940s. It doesn't mean it wasn't happening in the early 1900s. It doesn't mean it wasn't happening in the 1800s.
Definitely was happening before that. These are all old occult secrets. All of it is the mind control from MK Ultra, which happened before the 40s. I think it was even mainstream documentaries now are admitting that it was happening before then.
How much of history do you think has been invented?
Pretty much everything within, like, you could only probably go 100 years back, and everything before that's going to be barely get to 100 years back without question. And
do you think they literally changed the calendar?
Even the history I think we're given as we go is obviously altered in a way. It's like half truths. But I believe like what Steiner said, that you can't be sure of anything beyond 100 years, and even that's questionable.
They changed from the Gregorian, or they changed to the Gregorian calendar. It's
And
the
Julian.
Gregorian calendar from the Julian calendar in 16. Was it the 16?
Who the hell knows?
Mid 1600s, when
Seems like they claim. I'm sure there's a claimed date, but how the hell would we confirm any of it?
Well, here's the interesting thing. So, 1582, according to our story. Okay. October the 4th, then became October the 15th. So people went to sleep on the evening of October the 4th, right?
Is that the day that?
And they woke up and it was October the 15th.
Yeah, and then there's also the day that of 2 noons, the day of 2 noons when they standardized time. So that's another thing that happened. So people woke up in Chicago, for instance. This is when the Americas were young, or at least our version where it was young. And it was noon, and then at noon they had to wait 12 minutes, and then they reset the clocks to noon because they were on a new time standard.
Yeah,
based on, I think, a Greenwich Mean Time or whatever they use.
That's another time when they adjusted it. So,
Yeah.
it was October the 3rd. October the 3rd, they went to sleep, right? So people got into their beds on October the 3rd, and then they woke up and it was the 15th of October in the morning. That's what history says happened.
And then with some of these people too, before that with the Julian calendar, it was like what they were in like a beast. They just went to year 1 at some point. So
now this is very interesting because you look at the Arabic calendar, right?
Yeah, there's
the
all
Arabic
different ones.
calendar 1600 and something at the moment. Something like that.
Yeah, there's all different ones. They're all over the place. The Hebrew is somewhere, the Arabic somewhere else. There's multiple that are in the upper thousands.
And then we're supposed to believe that Muhammad was 5 centuries after,
Yeah. It's
Anno Domini, because we were told by the Western critics that that's when he was. But
and then flamenco comes out, and he's like, I went back and looked at every date book that the kings had from history that I could get my hands on, like original copies, and he's like, I freaking can't go back. He can only go back so far. Basically, I think it was, he thought there was 1,000 years added to the calendar because he couldn't match the eclipses to the dates that they were saying they should have happened on. It's like, this is not when it happened. If we go back from now, we could tell this is not when it happened. And this is not when they marked that it happened in some of these historical books. So it's like, what's that? We have no idea what the hell's going on.
So there's definitely been some severe adjustment to our time. And so I find this very strange because, like, I was watching a show the other day and they were talking about, but we know because in the 1600s this was this, and we know because in the 1400s this was this. And so a lot of the so-called narratives that we hear people talking about, even within our so-called truther field, right? People are all giving credibility to history as if it's real. And this is the one thing that Ronan and I always like. Well, I see eye to eye with a lot of things with Ronan, because Ronan comes from the perspective of like, you can't talk about history. What history? It's all just made up. It's all just BS. It's all just a bunch of nonsense. And the more you think about it, the more you realize, well, the history has been created to keep us in a linguistically controlled narrative, so that our minds can't jump out of the cage of belief, of worldview and ideology that we're stuck in. Because if you can control the ego, how do you control the ego? You reinvent the past.
Yeah.
So you control
Whoever controls
manipulate
the past, whoever controls the past controls the present. Whoever controls the present controls the future.
And then you manipulate the persona with the future, like pension, retirement, work hard, be a good little part of your society, you'll get to have a great, super awesome relaxation at the end of your hard worked life. And it's going to be like
one show I would recommend that I know some people didn't like the second season that much, or I didn't like the first season that much, but I watched Silo recently with the girlfriend, and it was like pretty much, this is the general idea, is like these people are living underground in a bunker, and it's almost like Fallout in a way, where it's like, but it's just better because Fallout kind of was all over the place. But they think that they don't really know what happened above ground, and they're given this fake history about everything. And they're gradually, some of them are learning that everything is a lie. Even the people who are running the friggin' silo, like only like one person actually knows some of the history, and he doesn't know all of it. It's called Silo. It's on Apple TV.
Silo. South Africa is limited to what we are allowed to watch because of copyright law. Because we don't acknowledge the same copyright law in the same way that America does. Different quadrants in the world have different.
You could probably use a VPN.
Very weird. We've got 50 years on our copyright. That's it.
You could probably use a VPN and watch it on Apple TV.
Does VPN not get blocked on Apple TV?
No, you can get a free one. There's a free VPN that you could get and just switch it to.
I got blocked from Netflix for using a VPN before.
Oh, really? Yeah, I've been able to use it. It worked for me. Like I could send it to you if I have to check what I have on here.
Okay, do please send me a good VPN and I'll try it, because then I might be able to see stuff that's blocked from my place. And I had VPN in the past, and Netflix basically started blocking my service, saying you're using a VPN. I was like,
we're using it on the computer?
I think so.
Yeah, see, I put it on I have an Apple TV box. I mean, you could probably do it on a Fire Stick if you have a Fire Stick or Apple. I don't know if you have an Apple TV. Maybe that's why it worked better for me. I don't know.
I've got a Samsung TV.
You could probably get a VPN on there, maybe. You just download the app on the VPN, just switch it to like UK or something, and let it run. It probably will be fine. I used a free one. I'll send you which one I used.
Cool, brother. Thank you. Thanks for that. Well, I think we've sort of 2 hours and 48 minutes. We've almost cranked up 3 hours. We were supposed to go only for 2.
Story of our lives. But next time we talk, we should get more into the MK programming.
I think that's going to be a scary one. We got to jump.
And by the way, so next week, actually, I mean, we could talk about this when I'm gone, but just so people know, I think I leave Tuesday to go to New Jersey for work, so we might have to move it a little earlier and get it done before I go. Yeah. And then I'll be back to normal after that, but just I'm gone Tuesday night to Sunday. I'm out of town for work.
We'll do it the day before, maybe.
Yeah, the day before. We'll figure it out. But we'll let people know.
It's been an honor, brother.
Absolutely.
Big love. Big blessings. Thank you all.
Much love to everyone in the chat.
Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you got what you came for. Sending you all the love in the world. And heard South Africa is trying to keep their analog system. Well, I hope so. I don't know what's going on in this country, to be honest with you. Like the electricity's on.
We could all go hang with Franklin if we have to, and chill out with him if we need to. Get the hell out of here.
Well, much love, much blessings, and I hope you have a good night and take it easy. And
thank you, brother. You too. I hope you have a good day. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. I'll talk to you later on.
Much love, blessings, peace, honor, and respect. Take it easy, everybody. Om Shanti.